Hey folks, Gway. Republican presidential candidate Nikki Haley. Wow, she was at a town hall in New Hampshire. She was being asked a bunch of questions by people in an audience and offering her responses to show how presidential she is and how aware she is. And someone said, "Can you tell me the reason for the American Civil War?" And infamously now, she says everything but slavery. I lived in the South, and I've had these conversations with people in the South. And it's not uncommon. It's not uncommon to hear people say, well, it really wasn't about slavery. It was about states' rights. States' rights to choose, and the federal government's imposition upon states, and it was about a southern economy under attack by a northern industrial economy, and so on and so forth. And on the surface level, I guess that makes a little bit of sense. But then you have to ask the question: well, states' rights to do what? To own slaves, right? A northern industrial economy versus a southern economy based on what? Slave labor. And then all of a sudden, anyhow, that's not what I wanted to talk about. I don't want to have an argument about was she right, was she wrong, she's wrong. What I wanted to talk about was a story in the Bible, actually, that sort of, I think, highlights what Nikki Haley was navigating when she was asked that question, and why answering the question honestly was so dangerous. I mean, really, it boils down to it was dangerous because there's a large segment of her voting bloc that would be appalled by her if she said the cause of the American Civil War in the 1800s was slavery. They'd be done with her. You're wrong. It would be over for her. Or at least that's what she was afraid of. See, there's a story. It's a very famous story in the Bible. There's a book, actually. It's in the Old Testament about Esther. And Esther was a princess. She was the king's wife. The king of the Persian king's wife, and Esther was also, she was of Jewish heritage, and the king was getting some advice by some of his from some of his advisors, who were telling him that he needs to be rid of these Jewish people. He needs to get rid of them, like literally, he needs to eliminate them, to kill them all. And so Esther's uncle, hearing this, he goes to Esther and says, "Esther, listen, you're in the perfect position to help us. You got to save us from this order." And Esther, this is Esther's conflict. She knows that if she goes and talks to the king about this, the king, just because she's talking to him, could have him killed. She's really afraid of this guy and afraid of the rules. And she knows that there are people in the king's court who she'd have to sort of navigate around in order to have this conversation with the king, to get the king to change his mind. And she's terrified. She's really afraid for her life. She's afraid for her life. Ultimately, in her way, she brilliantly navigates the politics, talks to the king, and the king changes his mind. And ultimately, at the end, it turns out really, really bad for those advisors who were telling the king to destroy Esther's people. But there was danger. For her to do what needed to be done, for her to do the right thing, it was really, really dangerous. And there was no guarantees that it was going to work out for her. In this story, like most stories, it does. But Jesus actually tells us that just because you're on the right side of things doesn't mean things are going to work out for you. He tells us that we should be prepared for persecution. Living our lives for him indeed will lead to persecution. So if you were to compare, if you have these two stories in front of you, you have Nikki Haley and the slavery question, and you have Esther and her uncle's request. Who will you be? Who will I be? Who should we be willing to be? See, you and I, we're going to have situations left, right, and center over the course of our lives where we are asked to do the right thing. Where we're asked to do the right thing. And we're going to have the knowledge that doing the right thing is going to cost us. Doing the right thing, saying what needs to be said, is going to cost us. It's going to cost us dearly in some cases. We're going to carry the chance. We're going to carry the thought that doing the right thing, saying the right thing comes with incredible risk. What will we choose to do? Will we choose to be an Esther? Or will we choose to be a Nikki Haley? Will we choose to be willing to take the chance, be willing to put ourselves on the line? Or will we choose to keep ourselves safe? Ultimately, that's what Nikki chose, right? Ultimately, that's what Nikki Haley chose. She chose to keep herself safe from a small but very vocal percentage of her voting base. And in return, the rest of the world now sees her as weak, fragile, spineless. May the Lord bless you. May the Lord keep you. May the Lord's face be made to shine upon you and be gracious to you. May the Lord's countenance be lifted up to you. May you always know the peace of being in the Lord's presence. And I pray that all of us with discerning hearts, regardless of how risky doing the right thing may be, regardless of how fraught with peril saying what needs to be said may appear, no matter how harmful standing up for justice and mercy and compassion and equality may be to us, I pray God would give us the courage to always stand up like Esther. Amen. Nemultus.